Hello, thank you for joining me to provide a short update about what has happened in the Bullarook system so far in the 2016-17 water year. Over the course of this short presentation, I'll just give an introduction about why we're actually making this presentation available to you, talk about what's happening in the Bullarook system conditions, what has changed over the last couple of months since we came out to speak to you at the start of July, and what these changes means for you as customers as we approach the rest of the 2016-17 water year. Earlier in July, we came out to speak to you because we had some significant concerns about ability to supply water for the entire year. The Bullarook system storages were very low, and it was a potential that we wouldn't be able to make water available. We'd seen very low allocations for the previous 12 months, and we were obviously concerned about what that meant for yourselves as customers. We're also seeing significant stream restrictions in the unregulated systems. Things have changed significantly since that time, I'm pleased to say, with significant rainfall occurring across our area. So we're taking this opportunity to update you about what has changed and what it can mean for you for the rest of this year. In terms of the Bullarook system, we speak of regulated surface water, unregulated systems, which are where customers can take water from waterways which aren't controlled by dams, but also groundwater in terms of availability there. So if we start with the seasonal determinations for the regulated water system. At the start of this season, the Bullarook system was looking very bad. Zero percentage of high reliability water shares available, certainly 0% of low reliability water shares available, and that came on the top of a very poor water availability year in 2015-16. Since that time, and with the most recent announcement available on the 15th of September, the Bullarook system has actually increased it to have its maximum possible availability of water, indicating that we've seen a very significant turnaround in that time. For the unregulated streams, this would be the streams in the Bullarook system accounted within the Loddon. Again, we saw a number of streams on suspension, and 23 out of 39 across the Loddon catchment itself. Since that time, we've also seen a large reduction in the number, so all systems now have zero streams on suspension, which means customers are able to take water at the time they choose according to their licence, which is a great turnaround. In terms of groundwater, groundwater use in the Bullarook system is largely controlled under the terms of the Groundwater Management Plan for the Loddon Highlands Water Supply Protection Area. In the Newland zone, customers only have access to 50% of their entitlement at this stage, and that was pretty much driven by poor recharge conditions in 2015-16. We've seen with the higher rainfall and better catchment runoff occurring that we've had a bit more recharge into the system. We're expecting that we will be able to see some improvement by November, which the plan gives us the opportunity to make. So we're seeing that over the next few weeks there will be an opportunity for increases in those systems, particularly Newland, but also hopefully the Ascot and Blampede zones as well. So if we were trying to indicate what has changed, how can we do that? I think it's best to look at the two storages in the Bullarook system about how they've changed. This is a screen trace taken from one of our data systems here at Golden Murray Water, and it shows data from the end of June, where we had very low volumes in storage for Newland Reservoir, up to a point where we're now spilling and having the storage sitting at 100% of capacity. So that occurred very rapidly, in the order of about 2 to 3 months. And that's really driven the change that we've seen in the regulated seasonal determinations. A similar story for Hepburn's Lagoon, the other key storage in the system. Over the same time frame, again, we've seen a very quick recovery to a point where the storage is sitting at full. So with both of those systems at capacity, That's really driven the ability to announce the 100% of high and low reliability water shares, but it's also indicating just how quickly the catchment has changed, and we're now seeing stream flows occurring far more regularly with consistent rain, and unfortunately for some people, some very wet soil conditions on their farms. The other way in which we can look at the change is reflected in the resource diagrams for the regulated systems. At the start of the season, we had about 1 gigalitre of water sitting in the storages to make available for customers, but we had significantly more in terms of commitments, so both storage losses, river losses, but also water that's been set aside under carryover for customers if they had some available to them. Go forward through the 15th of September, and we've seen that the volume of water in storage has increased, obviously, much more than it had been. And we're actually to a point now where we've got more water in storage than we need for all of our commitments for the rest of this year. So we're actually in a point where it's likely that we'll have some reserves available for 2017-18, which is far different to what we've seen for the last couple of years. In terms of the storage inflows, June 2016, Newland Reservoir only received approximately 600 megalitres into the storage, and that sort of volume would be exceeded in 94 years out of 100, only 3% of the long-term average. In June, it received about 100 gigalitres into storage, and again, while an improvement, it was still relatively low in terms of volumes entering the storage, particularly when you compare it with some of the changes that we'd seen in other systems across the Golden Murray Water Management Area. If we step forward through July and August, we can see that we've actually had significant volumes, and I apologise we don't have the percentage of average and probability of exceedance for July-August. But in terms of July itself, 2.1 gigalitres of water was received through the month, which is 77% of the long-term average for that month. And it would be exceeding 57 years out of 100. So approximately a 1 in 2 chance of having higher flows. So with those sort of characteristics occurring, we can see that that's really what's been driving the storage inflows. But seeing much larger volumes occurring in 2 months compared to what we saw in the previous 12 months is one of the real messages to take away. In terms of what's been driving it, and what we can look forward to into the future, well, the Bureau of Meteorology is due to update this outlook again shortly. However, at the moment, we've seen that the Bureau had indicated through September through to November that we would have slightly above average chances of exceeding average rainfall, or better than a 50% chance of exceeding the rainfall. That's certainly come true through September and has been characterised by some very strong inflows, and in parts of the Bullarook and Loddon system some very high inflows, as I just showed, but also further downstream in the Loddon system some flooding occurring as well. In terms of what's been driving that additional rainfall, it's been mainly an Indian Ocean dipole, which is a measure used by the Bureau of Meteorology to indicate the variation in sea surface temperatures between the coast of Australia, off the northwest coast, and Africa, apparently. At the moment, we've got conditions that are termed a negative Indian Ocean dipole, which is driving moisture into the atmosphere off the northwest coast of Australia, and that those sort of conditions have typically brought above average winter and spring conditions to most of Australia, and particularly the southeast coast, I should say. And that's certainly been the case for our area in northern Victoria as well. It's likely to continue until the end of spring. It's one of those things that's a bit difficult to forecast how long it's going to last, but the Bureau of Meteorology reviews it every couple of weeks about what is happening. The other influence I've put up there is El Nino/La Nina. The conditions this year had indicated that a La Nina may form off the east coast of Australia and over the Pacific Ocean. A La Nina event typically brings above average winter and spring rainfall conditions as well. The models that the Bureau of Meteorology refers to are showing that the chances of a La Nina event are continuing to decrease over the past few months. But while that's occurring, it's still producing neutral conditions. So the neutral conditions tend to favour the Indian Ocean dipole's impact on Victorian rainfall. So while we may not have a La Nina, which generally brings wet conditions as well, the current conditions are helping with those above average rainfall conditions across Australia. In terms of what this means for yourselves as customers, it's actually relatively good news. We've seen that we've got good water availability for surface water in the regulated systems and the unregulated systems. So where we were at the start of July, we were saying that we may not be able to deliver carryover, we may not be able to supply water for the entire year. That has turned around, and we can now guarantee that we can supply water through the year according to your orders. We're also likely to have those operating reserves to 2017-18, as I said, which means we won't have the same sort of poor start that we saw at the start of this year. For the groundwater customers, there is a bit of improvement still to be seen, but we're confident that with the recent rainfall and the catchment conditions that are prevailing at the moment, we're likely to see an opportunity to increase water availability, particularly in the Newland zone. In terms of indicators of resource improvement, for the surface water customers, in the regulated surface water customers I should say, seasonal determination assessments will continue to be made on the 1st and the 15th of each month, or the first business day thereafter, until all 6 systems that we look at have achieved 100% of high reliability water shares, and we're hoping to achieve that sooner rather than later. In terms of the next assessment that will be made for the Bullarook system and the others, it will be made on Monday the 3rd of October at 10 a.m. If you're after further information about operations this year, by all means please contact Golden Murray Water at on the telephone number there or at the website, and you can also consult the Northern Victorian Resource Manager website for further information about resource availability across the Bullarook system. Or you can speak to your local customer service coordinator or potentially your diversions inspector if you're interested in unregulated surface water or groundwater. If you've got any questions for Golden Murray Water or wish to leave any feedback, please contact us at reception@gmwater.com.au, and hopefully I've managed to give you some information that's the good news as opposed to some of the bad news that Golden Murray Water has been giving you in terms of water availability over the past few months. So on that note, I wish you all the best and good luck for the rest of this year. Thank you.